Welcome back. In the last part, we learned about how the manual mode and the flash output work, and what we saw was that we had to take a couple of shots, do a bit of trial and error, and then we get to the right flash output value that we have to use. But of course, there can be situations where doing this procedure can slightly be challenging and frustrating, because let's say if you're doing a type of photography which involves quick shooting, like for example event photography, we won't have that much time to really change the flash output and see what's working for us. And that's where this particular thing that we're going to learn in this video, which is called as the TTL mode, which stands for through the lens, will help you, because this will get rid of that trial and error process that we just saw in the last video, and your flash will fire the correct amount of output right in your first shot. In order to understand this, first let's go into our laptop, into our drawing board, and let's see what exactly is TTL and how this mode actually works. Because once you understand this through the process with the help of some diagrams, you'll be able to understand how this whole thing can really help you as a photographer. So let's go inside and let's understand the TTL mode, and then we'll come back and take a shot. Alright, so let's try to understand the TTL system, which stands for through the lens, as we've already discussed. So this is a camera and this is the flash on it, believe it or not, and that's our subject. And I really wish that my explanation is better than my artistic talent, but yeah, I think this should do the job. So yeah, so that's your camera. And so how it all works is that usually whenever you fire a flash, this is how flash photography works, that when you take a shot, the light from your flash, it goes and hits your subject, the light reflects back into the lens, and let's say this is the sensor of your camera, and it just goes here and your image is formed, right? So of course, if you're using manual flash, like we've already seen, you have to kind of change the output power and get to the right amount of light thrown. But like we've already discussed before, that can be slightly challenging and frustrating. So how TTL works is there's something called as pre-flash. So when you set your speed light or your flash or your external flash to the TTL mode, what it does is that when you press the shutter button to take the shot, before the actual shot is taken, your flash actually fires a small little light. It actually fires the flash basically, which is called as pre-flash. But this particular flash, which also goes and does the same thing, that it hits your subject and the light goes into your camera. But this particular pre-flash is not used by the camera to form an image. This pre-flash is just used by the camera to understand what the scene that you're shooting is like. For example, so this pre-flash is so fast that you actually don't see it. It's really, really very fast. All you see is the second flash which actually fires. So how it works is, when you're on the TTL mode, there's going to be a pre-flash which is very quick. This pre-flash, the only job of this thing is to go, hit onto your subject, reflect back into the camera, and tell your camera how far the subject is, what are the lighting situation on the subject, and then it also sees what are the settings that you've input in your camera. And it sees all these things and it just communicates all this to the camera, and the camera in turn communicates to, so the metering system in the camera, it communicates to the flash that, okay, according to the information that we've got thanks to this pre-flash, this is, X is the amount of flash output required to correctly light this subject or this scene, right? So it's kind of an automatic way of just, coming to know what the correct flash output is. So just once again, in case you're getting confused, it's very, very simple. When you're on TTL mode, there's going to be a little burst of light which you don't see. You're only going to see the second main flash. But this burst of light, it just goes, or this pulse of light hits your subject, reflects back into your metering system of the camera. It sees a lot of different things like the distance, the lighting, the settings, everything. And then your camera can come to know through all this what it needs to communicate to the flash. So the camera tells the flash, hey, listen, we've kind of analyzed this. You need to fire at X output, and that's going to be the correct output. So yeah, that's basically it is. I know it's not a very technical explanation, but you really don't have to, this is absolutely fine if you just understand this. So what happens is, of course, so the moment you take your shot, this is done very quickly, and then the actual flash fires at this particular flash output or the flash power which is required to light up the scene correctly. So basically, in your very first shot, you get the correct flash output required. You don't have to play that guessing game. So this is how the TTL or the through the lens system works. I know it's very sophisticated. So many things are going on here. We don't have to really know about that. We just know, we just click and we get the right output. So of course that is great for a photographer. Let's actually see this in action. All right, so now you know how the TTL system works. Now it's time to see this in action, and you're going to realize that how easy this makes photography for you. So I've got my flash again on this time, just like the last video. And in the last video, I didn't tell you the settings that I was using. In case you're following this absolutely with me, then the settings that I used for those last shots in my camera, I'm talking about the manual mode settings, the aperture, shutter speed, and ISO, were shutter speed of 1/100, aperture f8, and ISO 400. These were the settings I used. Of course, we have a separate section on settings, so don't worry about it right now. I just thought I'll tell you the settings which I actually used and I'm going to be using for this shot, so that in case you're practicing this in a similar environment, maybe you can get similar looking shots, right? So having said that, let's take this shot. I've set my camera, or I've set my flash rather, to the TTL mode this time. So of course, everything is going to work automatically. It's going to calculate the power. All I have to do is simply press my shutter button to take the shot. So let's do this. All right, I've got a good looking shot. Let's go inside our laptop. Let's have a look at it. So this is the shot that we've got when we used the TTL function. You can see that this time this is not overexposed or underexposed. You don't have to do any trial and error, and simply just by taking one shot, the flash fired the correct amount of output required in order to expose this scene. Now, it can happen that, let's say, sometimes you may want something to be too bright or slightly too darker than what TTL has given you. For example, when I'm shooting my events, sometimes I like to just brighten up things more than what the TTL is offering me, and you still can do that even in TTL. You just don't have to settle for what you have got, because there's a function called as flash exposure compensation, which is something we're going to be looking at in the next video, and that will help you just compensate for the exposure if in case you wanted things to be slightly more brighter or darker than what the TTL gave you. But we'll see that in the next video. Bye for now.